Okay. Tuesday, November 27, 2018. Town of Monroe Zoning Board of Appeals. Town of Monroe Senior Center, 101 Mine Road, Monroe, New York, at 7:30 p.m. We'll do a roll call.
Abe Mueller is absent. Jonas Hoffman.
Here.
Joe Davis is absent. Robert O'Neill.
Here.
Seth Bader.
Here.
Michael Murphy.
Here.
Peter Lewis.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum for this evening.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. We rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have the exits to the back, 2 exits. We have an exit over here. Okay, new business. Godfer Rahman, section block and lot number 4-15-3. Who's there for this matter tonight? Please step up.
Hello, folks.
Yes, your name, please.
Sure. My name is Michael J. Sandor. I'm with MJS Engineering, and with me is the owner, the applicant of the home.
Okay. Can you explain to us?
Sure. I'll do a little history of the project.
Okay.
A little history of the property. The property was new and constructed in 2005, and the applicant, the owner here, is the original owner and original occupant. The house was constructed with a side-loaded garage on the basement level. The property slopes down from the road. And just this past year, some work was done on the house to create a parking area in front of the house with, decorative blocks and whatnot. And we're here because on August 6th of this year, a notice of violation was issued by the building department. We have spoken with the building department, and in order to keep or continue to utilize the front area as a parking area, we're required to come here for some relief. We've provided a copy of the survey, a copy which also shows the area where the work was done. We filled out an application, and there's a little more history to it. His mom actually lives in the house with him. She's 82 years old, and I'm sure we're all, at our age, we have our parents that we have to take care of. They live with us, and one of the things that was difficult for this applicant was the fact that they had the garage underneath the house, and she utilizes a walker. So part of that decision to create this area was an ease of access to get in the home. And I'm sure we all understand that. The other thing that's unique in this particular situation is if the house was built with a front loading garage, there's many houses that have parking areas, not within the garage, but they park their cars in the front of the garage area, which is in the front yard, which technically would be a violation of that section of the town code. So we're in a unique situation here, as he's trying to accommodate for his mom And also, when he did construct it, and he did construct it without a building permit, so we're cognizant of that. And if, let's say he did apply for a building permit, we would have to come here first anyway. So we're kind of after the fact. So we've done some research, and it's all in the documentation. The number of houses in the area, the number of houses that have front-loaded garages. And again, if he had a front-loaded garage with 2 cars, and let's face it, every adult that lives in Monroe, in our community, and I live here also in the town, every adult has a car. So if you go up and down these blocks, and you'll see cars parked, you know, whether or not it's a side-loaded garage, there's just a lot of vehicles. So we are seeking that relief. I think the best summary is some of the written summary that we prepared, which answers the questions that are typical, that have to be answered for a ZBA decision. And that's on our letterhead, and it's basically the reason for the request. And if you like, I can go through that if you so desire. Explain briefly what grant of request variance will not, 1, change the nature of the neighborhood, and 2, be detrimental to the neighborhood properties. And again, this is our answers. The requested variance will not change the nature of the neighborhood. Of the existing 23 existing homes on Round Lake Avenue, 12 of the houses, including the applicant, have front-loading garages or parking in the front yard. 2, the grant of variance will not be detrimental to the neighborhood properties because 12 of the 23 homes already have front-loaded garages or parking in the front yard. The addition of 1 house with parking in the front yard where none is permitted is consistent with the majority of the homes on the street. And then B, explain briefly, 1, why a variance is only feasible means of achieving the benefit sought by the applicant, this project, and 2, why the variance requested is the minimum variance necessary. And we have answered 1, the variance is the only feasible means of achieving the benefit sought because the applicant has a side-loading garage. Parking of additional vehicles in the driveway would inconvenience the use of the garage, and the topography of the site does not permit parking beyond the house in the rear yard. Number 2, the variance requested is the minimum variance necessary because the applicant is requesting space to park 2 vehicles in the front yard. The 2 vehicles in addition to the garage space is not unreasonable for a single-family residential home with an adult, children, and parents. And I might add, number 3, there is the situation with his elderly mom. And by parking in the front, especially with a walker, although there's a couple of steps up to the house, it still is much better than parking on the side. You can't go up from the stairs in the basement. That's out of the question. You would have to go all the way around the house and then to the front yard and up to the house. And C, state whether the variance sought is large in size. If so, set forth any mitigating circumstances. And we have responded, the variance sought is not large in size. It is the minimum necessary to park 2 vehicles. D, state whether the project is anticipated to have any adverse physical or environmental impacts to the neighborhood. And we've answered, parking 2 vehicles in the front yard of a single-family residence home has no adverse environmental impacts. The creation of the parking area has not caused a drainage or traffic problem or been a visual eyesore of the neighborhood. And lastly, E, explain briefly why the difficulty in complying with the applicable zoning has not been self-created. And obviously, we've answered the need for a variance is in fact self-created. We've also provided a short-form environmental assessment, and we also went through any requirements that the county would have to review this under 239, I think it is. And none of those are triggered, I believe, or they're not triggered to have a county review. So that's the summary of the project. It's my understanding that a public hearing would have to be held, and we'll make ourselves available for that. And I guess if you have any questions, we're here to address them.
Thank you.
Go
Jonah,
ahead.
if I
Yes.
can start with
Yes.
some questions. Oh, thank you, Mike, for the summary of the situation here. But one of the things I noticed on the map that was provided is there is no zoning data table provided on this drawing. So I looked up the zoning for this, and this is in the SR 15 district,
I believe so.
and it's with, central sewer facilities. So, just going over the zoning criteria, because that's what this zoning board is about, and if we're going to grant you a variance, we want to make sure that it's complete and accurate. So, the minimum lot area is 15,000 square feet. This lot falls short of it, but it was pre-existing condition, I'm sure. This lot is only 11,680 square feet. Minimum lot width required is 85. What's provided here is 80. Again, probably a pre-existing condition that you can do nothing about. The minimum front yard requirement is 40 feet. This building is shown as only being 34 feet from the front property line. So having been built in 2005, you really should have been complying with, the front yard setback requirement. Minimum one side yard is 15 feet, which you comply with on the northerly side yard, where you have 15.2, but both side yards need to add up to 40 feet. Here, your total side yards is only 35 feet, 36 maybe. So that's, some of the things I want to be clear about as to whether or not you need additional variances or how this property was built in 2005 without complying with these codes. The other thing that is required is minimum rear yard 40 feet. This rear yard is 81, so you clearly have plenty of rear yard. The next criteria I'm concerned about, which is the maximum lot coverage of 50%. And I'm concerned about that because with the construction of the new driveway without permit, you may be in exceedance of that 50% maximum impervious area. I did a quick estimate. I came up with 58, so it's close, but that extra driveway that was built may have pushed it over the limit. And the maximum building height, 35 feet, and it's clearly, below 35 feet. So that's my concern with the zoning setbacks. None of that is spelled out on this map, and I think we have other issues, concerning those zoning setbacks, unless when this house was constructed, there was some waivers granted for that construction, not meeting those setbacks. I see from the revision block here that there was a foundation location conducted during the construction in 2005, and then an as-built constructed in 2005. So the town was made aware of these setback conditions back in 2005. I just don't see anything on this map that says, that's in compliance with the zoning. So those are my concerns. The other thing, we're talking about, the number of parking spaces on this site. I mean, you built this to have additional parking on the front of the lot. The way, prior to adding the 2 new parking spaces in the front of the house, the driveway itself being 20 feet wide and 85 feet long provides for as many as 8 cars being parked in that driveway. So, I mean, there appears to be plenty of parking on the site. And now with the additional 2 in the front yard, you're up to a total of 10 parking spaces. And I don't know if you're doing that to keep the main driveway clear of any vehicles so you can get in and out of the side garage. I don't, with the narrow side yard you have, I don't know that that's an easy maneuver to make to get into that side garage entrance. But, it seems like there's, inch by inch, there's kind of an urbanization happening in this town.
And these are the kinds of issues that come up, you know, somebody builds a lot, and then they build a little bit more on the lot, and they're out of compliance from the start, and they're going further out of compliance, and then they come here to this board for relief after the fact. So I would appreciate it if you could, you know, go through the zoning table, provide zoning required, existing conditions, and proposed conditions, and indicate which variances you need beyond what is currently being asked for, because I think there are a number of them on this list that may apply.
All right, so my response is, we do not have an attorney here, number one, so I don't know how that reflects back to when the original building permit was issued or when the original C of O was issued. I surely can review some of the building department files, but like you said, there is an as-built that was done, which is what you're seeing as our base map. And our office actually put additional information in red, and we so noted that on this particular drawing. We have been in contact with Donald Steggs. We are allowed to use his plan or his map. I would have to research with the building department, you know, whether or not it was compliant when the building permit, or when the C of O was issued.
Was issued, yeah.
All right?
I
I
think,
don't know, I also don't know how the zoning might have changed in that, from then to now. But I believe the only issue before the board is that section of the code that deals with the parking in the front. I'm not so sure you can click it back to other zoning issues that have
no,
been
but
brought to
my
this
point
board.
is, if there are other variances that are on this lot that are not being accounted for, it makes it harder to grant an additional variance, you know what I'm saying? So if there are already, you know, 3 previously granted variances for side yard, front yard, and percent impervious, then, you know, then when we look at this additional parking in the front yard, and also I'm trying to wrap my mind around why you need 10 parking spaces for a single-family house. I mean, that's a lot of parking spaces.
Well, one of the things I can look into is whether or not variances were granted when the house was constructed.
When the house construct, Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Yes.
were you the one that built the house?
When I bought those, those was under construction. Just started.
The house was under construction when he went into
And
contract.
you're not aware of any,
No.
you didn't have to come to the board,
No,
the zoning board to
no,
get
I
additional
didn't. I
variances
just-
for
yeah.
anything?
Yeah.
Do you live there, Mr. Mahler?
Yeah.
So one of the,
Pull your mic, that's it.
one of the points that Mike made was the additional parking was to accommodate 2 cars?
Correct.
Why would there need to be 2 cars if it's to
It's
accommodate?
the two because it's like you can get it in and get it out very quicker. That's why that's the reason, because my everybody I have 4 cars in the house and everybody SUV, so a little bigger space. So even 1 car you park it. I didn't measure the properly how either 2 or 3 or 1. I just take like whatever the front side. One side I leave the grasses, and one side I did this like as a parking lot. I didn't as a measure properly that either 1 or 2.
So how many cars are parked
2
in that
Front.
spot, in the front?
from 2, yeah.
But if only 1 is needed to make it easier for your mother to get in and out?
Yeah,
why do
because
we-
my kids like in the morning time they want to go to the college, and so just start the car and just leave.
There's 4 people in the dwelling that have cars. So,
Okay.
And is the driveway, I mean, I went past and looked at it, is the driveway wide enough for 2 cars to fit on it?
It's like it too close.
Yeah.
So like one time my son hit my car. So
Right.
this is also I don't do side by side.
Mhm. Right. Now, when you did this, were you aware that you needed a permit to?
Well, I spoke to the inspector and I apologized to him, because when I look at my town, like a 90% house, everybody have their car. Even a lot of people they park on the side, even this not illegal
Mhm.
parking. If you go to Quaker Hill, everybody park on the sidewalk.
Right.
So even they park on the grasses. So I say, you know what? That movement, I just think about my mom. I didn't think anything else, and I just did it, and I apologized to him,
Right.
and I said I cannot go back, but I can go in the move forward.
If he did go for a building permit, he would have to go to this board anyway. In other words, you're not going to go to a building inspector
Right,
and ask for
right.
permission to put the...
Right, I think
You
some of-
also
yeah.
need a highway work permit, I believe,
Right.
as well.
But, I mean, some of our concern is that people do these things and they come to the board after the fact. It's, people should
That
know.
wasn't my intention.
No,
I just,
I get it.
I thought only for
Right.
what is it help to my mom to get into the house, from the front of the house only 2 steps.
Mhm.
So she can go one and two. She don't have to count 1 to 100 to get it in.
Sure.
One of the things that Mike referenced, which was a concern of mine, and I was looking for the same tables, is that lot coverage. And part of the requirements for the lot coverage, or the boundaries on lot coverage, are to allow for, pervious surfaces, right? Or limit the amount of impervious surfaces. And, you referenced half of the houses, ballpark on the block have front entry parking, or front-facing parking. The difference between what I see your property and those is they may have front entry garages or garages and parking on the front of the house, but there isn't also an additional parking on the side of the house. The challenge that I'm seeing facing within your particular property is, and I drove, Peter and I were out and saw it yesterday. The entire, front half of the lot is blacktop. I mean, there's a little, and I know it's notated here, it doesn't even appear like it's that much green space and pervious surface. It looks like a very small piece of the front of the lawn. So that's part of the things that, are being considered is an awful lot of lot coverage by impervious surface.
Yeah, just following up on that, we spent a lot of time on this board talking about lot coverage, so that's why we're kind of sensitive to it a little bit. But I was just curious about just a kind of a clarification, looking at this property versus the other ones in the neighborhood, and I understand, some of your neighbors seem to be doing the same thing, but I guess, is there a difference in the zoning description or definitions for a paved drive versus a parking area, right? So some of these you're saying there's front end garages and people park on them, but that's their driveway, but that's I think that's separate from paved parking areas. I just wanted to know if there's a distinction there. I think there might be.
It appears that there is, based upon the way you look at the application. I haven't looked at the code provision specifically, but in the application attaches the copy of the building inspector's denial letter, which then cites to the 2 sections of the code, and it's talking about an accessory garage or accessory parking area.
Right.
It's not talking about a driveway, it's talking about a parking area and accessory building.
Yeah, because I think driveways are defined differently in the zoning.
Yeah.
I believe. I have to check that.
I have to check the code, but in 2006, is that the same percent coverage as the new code this year? I think it's changed a bit. And also the percent coverage, I think there was a provision in there that talked about, pervious versus impervious. But I have to check that. Only because it's new, because it's being brought up at this board here.
It's because we see it a lot. And it's just this sort of thing, you have a small lot and everybody comes in and they do a little bit more and a little bit more. And it's like you said, well, there's no drainage impact here. It's not going to cause any flooding. No, it's not going to cause any flooding, but it's going to cause additional runoff from this additional, 40-foot by 20-foot long paved area. One question might be, well, what do you do about that? how do you mitigate for that on this site? The driveway's already built, and it's what, asphalt driveway?
No, it's brick pavers, but I'm telling you
Well,
from...
brick pavers, if you don't have,
Well, from-
the right bedding materials and separation between the bricks, it's as impervious as
Well,
concrete.
yeah, that's why I will address that, because that has come up in my professional, firm. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll create some type of pervious pavement
Right,
in lieu of a hard surface such as this.
right, and that's,
So maybe
actually,
that could be a mitigating effect as far as the percent coverage.
right, and we've actually entertained that option on this board in other applications. That's one way to mitigate for the, the excessive impervious area is to do permeable pavements, or in this case, if the pavement's already down and it would mean ripping up the driveway, putting in new bedding and different pavers, you don't want to go through all that work. You have the whole rooftop. Maybe you can capture the rooftop and put that into seepage pits
Well,
as an alternative. But we're not that far down the road yet where that's going to be required. I think we still have to figure out what are the actual variances you need and why, and if you don't need them for front yard, side yard, and percent impervious, we got to figure out why. So there's got to be some background research done into how this house became to be where it is with these setbacks.
all right, so if that's still a question, then that would have to be noticed, right, in the public hearings? What specific variances we're requesting?
For sure.
There you go,
Yeah.
so.
So I think
Tell us how to proceed.
it would seem to me that the best way to proceed would be to get a map that has the bulk tables on it, get to the bottom of where their prior variance is granted, where they're not, so that you can get a handle on, what is the current compliance with each of the bulk requirements on this lot currently, even without the paved parking, the new paved parking, and then, with it added, does it affect the lot coverage? Are there other variances that are going to be required? And if so, it would make sense for the board and for the applicant to know that before any public hearing is noticed. Obviously, because the public hearing is going to have to list all the variances that are requested, otherwise you're going to have to come back and then renotice it anyway.
Correct.
So I think it seems to me that maybe there's a two-step process moving forward. One is maybe to come back to the board prior to a public hearing with the information that they've identified that they're asking for, gain some understanding at the next meeting. I know it's going to cost you one more meeting here, but gain some understanding as to what exactly is required, and then have the board set a public hearing, knowing, okay, hey, we do need these additional variances, or for the following reasons, based upon your research, we don't need these variances. It's back to just the ones that we thought we needed, which was the two regulations cited in the building inspector's memo. But at least that way, the public hearing can be noticed properly, and it'll be legal, and you don't have to then come back another time. So probably not what you wanted to hear
No.
in regard to
That's
timing,
why-
but it makes sense procedurally, I think.
I've been through this enough, I kind of know what the procedures are.
Right.
And I don't want to have to come back after the fact. But I do have a question. Just based upon the information that you have, minus the percent coverage and whether or not it's, we meet the side yards or the front yards as, I'm saying they're pre-existing, And even if they're pre-existing and it might be non-conforming yards. I think the only issue, the big issue for us and my client is the front yard and the parking in the front yard. And instead of going through a whole litany of other issues regarding the existing conditions, is that a showstopper, parking in the front yard?
Right, so, in other words, you're kind of informally asking, hey, straw poll, is this something that you're open to as a concept, or are we talking about a bunch of stuff around the main issue? The elephant in the room is, hey, it's a pretty big spot of paved parking in the front yard. Is this going nowhere anyway? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm asking.
Look, as the attorney...
I don't want to put anybody on
Yeah,
the spot.
Right. In other words, the board, you know, careful not to prejudge any application. Obviously, we're not even at a public hearing, so nobody would be prejudging anything, but, you know, if anybody wants to express to the applicant, you know, you know, any views, maybe using some of the criteria pre-hearing, you know, you're free to do that, and with the proviso that certainly nobody's prejudging anything. We're not at a hearing. We don't even know what variances are required yet, so you're just looking for some informal feedback. The board is free, if they wish, to give some informal feedback.
And I'm not, if you don't want to make that decision or talk about it, that's fine with me too. I don't want to put anyone on the spot. But if you want, I'll come back.
Again, David, rein me in if this question is irrelevant or something I can't ask, but what floor, first or second floor of the house that your mother's room is?
First floor.
The first floor.
She'll live in the next to the living room.
So when you enter through the front door of the house?
One is the second story, and that's it. She didn't go further.
So that side driveway, those steps go down to the paved parking, or?
Because the driveway like this, so she have to go all the way.
So that paved parking area is higher than the driveway, or
No,
vice
the
versa?
the
Driveway's
front-
higher.
Like this.
Yeah, the driveway goes down and it
Okay.
goes into the basement.
Okay, okay.
And like I said before, there's a set of stairs that go from the basement to the first floor, but you can't go up with a walker.
Right, right. Okay.
I mean,
You know,
quite
I guess
frankly-
my thought is, you know, again, just throwing this out here, trying to see if it's worth going through this, is just based on past stuff, is lot coverage, you know, impervious surface coverage. We've had a lot of issues with that over the past couple of years, just making sure we don't go overboard on too much impervious surfaces. The other thing is the comparisons with other houses in the neighborhood. I mean, I take that, and personally, I take that into account. You know, I mean, if like, man, everybody else is doing it, that doesn't make it right, but one of the things I'd like to do is, I haven't driven through the neighborhood, but
Subtract.
some of these comparisons you're making, are they actually driveways or are they additional parking areas? To me, I think there's a distinction between those two. I believe there is.
And obviously, you want to see it for yourself, but just
Right.
to comment on that, you know, I visited yesterday, you know, one of the factors we have to, you know, consider is which letter is it here?
The building inspectors?
You know, the first one, the reason for request is the requested variance, you know, will not or will change the nature of the neighborhood. My personal opinion of, you know, driving down that street, seeing the other homes, it is a difference in the character of the neighborhood. Even though it's front parking, it's a different type of front parking. Like I was mentioning, it's a very long driveway, decently wide on the side of the house, with a couple steps, paving stone steps that lead up to another very large section of blacktop. So from the street view of the house, it looks very industrial. It's a lot of blacktop. You look at some of the other homes, even the ones that have the garages that have entry to the front of the house and the driveway running straight to the front of the house, some are much, much narrower, some are equally sized, but there are no other areas of pavement on the property. So from a comment, and I think this is what you were asking, like just, you know, unofficially, or just, you know, weighing some of my initial thoughts, not prejudging anything, you know, the response to one of those questions, or one of the things that were posed to consider, it does to me appear to be a difference in the character of the neighborhood. You know, and then obviously, you know, we already addressed that it's self-created. You know, the adverse physical environmental impacts, that's speaking to the whole element of lot coverage, right? One reasoning behind lot coverage is to limit the amount of impervious surface, to control runoff, but also to allow for recharge. right? And if all this water is just flowing down the street into the storm drains, it's not allowing it to take place. So, you know, again, informally commenting on that. You know, it's a, you know, whether it's something that could be achieved by some other feasible means, you know, based off of what you described of the location of your elderly mother's room, you know, and the use of a walker, I agree. The bottom of the driveway up through the stairs in the house is probably not a feasible means, but could it be achieved? You know, one question that I'm considering is, could it be achieved from the top of that driveway utilizing that walk? You know, if one car was parked on the driveway, and, you know, allowed for access at less of a grade than going up a flight of stairs to the basement, you know, with the use of a walker, is that a possible or feasible means to accomplish, you know, the variance that, you know, or what you're trying to achieve without the use of a variance? You know, so that just someone like, you would ask.
Yeah,
someone like
I understand what you're
commentary.
trying to come at, but I would say it's funny, the ADA requirements, which are promulgated by the federal government, all our commercial buildings must adhere very strictly to that requirement.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, I mean, for a residential home, there's not a requirement for that.
Right.
So, having a car on a slope would not meet any ADA requirements for a commercial property. So, that also has to be weighed in this, for this applicant, in my opinion. Now, you do have a couple of steps, oh yeah, but could you put a ramp up to it? Yeah, that would help as well. So if you had somebody that was severely handicapped, I'll say, that could drive, you know, that might be a whole different thing here, but we're all trying to accommodate our parents. I went through that with my house personally, you know, and we looked in the town of Monroe for an accessory apartment, and it was impossible at the time. We finally got a place where we couldn't accommodate our in-laws, and that's really what he's trying to do here. Did he make a mistake? Yes. You know, he put this in, and that's why we're here.
Right.
And I'm sure if you went to a building department prior to making the construction, we'd be here as well. Now, as far as the percent impervious, I had a couple of projects here in the town of Monroe, and then we had to discuss that as far as the building permit. And we did get around some of that. And I have to research that. I mean, I have to go back and get back to you on that. So I'm willing to do that.
I don't think we want to get around the impervious rules. I think we want to comply with them as best we can.
That's what I meant.
Okay. One other question, Mike. On the front of the house, there is a kind of a double wall line that runs around the perimeter of the porch. You can see like there are two bay windows on the
That's a planter area.
planter area.
Just like a front garden.
There's those are bow windows, I guess. Yeah, those are bow windows on either side of the porch. Then there's a set of steps, and then on either side, those boxes, those are planters. Those are planter areas.
Yeah,
And
that's
I should
not,
have brought pictures. I did have pictures. I should have brought.
It's hard to see.
it's not a
Yeah,
wall.
pictures
I don't
might
think
help
so.
also. It's just a.
Yeah. Have you considered reducing the size of that parking area at all? Like you're saying now it's a 2-car parking area, but is there an option to reduce that to a 1-car to accommodate the situation with having your mom having the availability of something? I mean, it's not unfortunately, we have to talk about these things because you did something, you know, it's there, but the ruling on our side could potentially come down that it's not approved, and, you know, potentially you will have to remove what you did.
See that?
So I'm wondering if there's other options where it's
I
not
mean,
as severe as removing it all, but.
Everything's an option, so
Right.
let's leave it at that.
Well,
Okay.
I guess that's it, is, when you come back next month, if you could lay out some options, as to how you can mitigate for this additional parking in the front. I mean, if you don't need all of the parking on that side driveway, right, it's 20 feet wide, 21 feet wide, 85 feet long, can you eliminate some of the hardscape in the backyard and maybe the last 20 feet of that driveway, so that what you're doing is getting rid of something and replacing it with new, better access driveway out front, rather than having all of this as impervious area? Or, again, consider, taking your rooftop runoff and putting it into seepage pits or something, just come up with some menu of alternatives.
We'll look into that. We'll look into that.
Give us a reason to
We'll look into that. Thank you.
work with you.
Anything else?
No.
I think these board members have suggested some good ideas to work around, to see how you could come up.
And I'll bring some pictures in.
That would help
Next meeting.
also a lot.
So what I'm going to assume is that the next meeting we have, I'll address some of the bulk requirements, some options, and at that meeting, we'll discuss what specific variances we'd be seeking, in addition to the ones we listed.
Okay,
All right?
yes.
So for your information, there is no meeting for the month of December because the fourth Tuesday of the month is Christmas.
That's fine.
So we are scheduled for tentative until the schedule gets approved. January 22nd is the meeting, and the submittal date would be January 2nd.
Gives you an extra month to work out the details.
Right.
How nice.
Well, I mean, I guess we're not holding you up from
No,
anything,
no,
right? I
look,
mean, it's constructed, you're
I
utilizing
said this
it.
on many boards. I'm no longer going to push any boards. I'm no longer going to rush any boards. I'm done with that.
You're losing your fight.
But thank you.
It's existing, and meanwhile, his mother could get around, right?
Right.
So,
So we're in compliance with the building department, so we're before your board.
yes,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you so much.
But
Have a good evening.
take care.
Take care.
Look at minutes.
That's all we got left.
I had
There's only a
one,
few of them.
Did we approve a few last time? Yeah. a
Yeah,
few times
we're
ago.
a little, few months behind schedule on those.
So we're gonna do now April 24.
Well, that one's been hanging for 3 months because we didn't have enough people to vote the last time, so that's back again. But Dave just said he had something, I thought.
yeah, I've got something else that I wanted to talk to you about. The last time you had voted to grant the variance application on, I always get it backward, 21 Tower or Tower 21?
Tower 21 Estates.
That was the one where they were demolishing the single-family home and constructing a new, bigger, single-family home, and he required a variety of variances for that, and you voted to grant it, but the condition was that, remember, the access to the property was off the driveway that
The neighbor.
located on the neighbor's property, and the condition was that you wanted the applicant to prove his entitlement, the right of access over that property as a condition, so that no CO or building permit could be issued until he provided that to the board or to the board's counsel. Today, I got some communication from the attorney for the applicant, and he provided me with a couple different things. He gave me a title report or an abstract report that he had pulled, that he had ordered from an abstract company, and it had some attachments with some deeds, and one of them, it was a cover letter addressed to them indicating that there was a 50-foot wide right-of-way over tax lot 46, that's the neighbor, in favor of the subject lot. And then he gave me a series of deeds. They're not the 100% picture of clarity that if I drafted a right-of-way, I would be drafting a right-of-way document, and I would say, these are your rights, these are the responsibilities of everybody, and then we would have that filed. That's what we would do these days, but apparently these were granted back in like the 60s. And there's a couple deeds that reference the fact that
it does exist. So there's one deed that he gave me from 1969 that talked about, made reference to there being a 50-foot right-of-way on the southerly portion of the lot, and then actually granting to his predecessor in interest the right to use the above-mentioned right-of-way. So it seems that that's a right. And then in speaking with him about it on the phone, I asked him, I said, well, where's the underlying right-of-way? And he says, look, we just can't locate it, but he goes, I'm going to go back and talk to my, title abstractor. And he says, I talked to him, and he says he did find another deed that's a little bit more clear, and he sent that to me, and that's a more recent deed from 2007, which is a deed for that particular property, and it gives a Schedule A description, and then it says, together with a right of use over the 50-foot right-of-way adjoining the premises on the south. So that's pretty clear that it's being conveyed in this chain of title. Again, I personally, like in a perfect world, I'd rather see it be more clear, but it doesn't exist. And he's got two deeds that are definitely referencing in his chain of title that he has the right-of-way over a 50-foot right-of-way that exists in that very location. So my view is that this suffices and that it would satisfy the condition. It's your call. My advice would be that this is sufficient. But I'm happy to talk to you about it further. If anybody has further questions, we could ask the applicant to go back and find more. But I wanted to report that to you all.
Dave, I have one question. If it is a right-of-way, does that now then make that side yard a front yard by our zoning and requiring a greater setback than what they've provided?
That'd be a question for the building inspector, but I don't think so. I think it's just simply a right of access over it. It doesn't it doesn't change the yards, in my view, but again, I'm not the one that's interpreting, it's the building inspector's job.
Because it seems like, you can't have it both ways. Either it's a right-of-way and other people have access over it, including this applicant, and if so, that changes this yard to a corner yard, a corner lot, and possibly requiring two front yards by the Town of Monroe zoning code.
So my suggestion would be, that's a good question. I don't think so, but again, I'm just a lawyer. The building inspector knows this stuff inside and out. It's his job to interpret the code and say, hey, look, if there's a right-of-way there, does that make this a corner lot? Does that change everything? So my suggestion would be to address that question to the building inspector and say, look, here are the deeds. Let us know. If there's a right-of-way, there's a 50-foot right-of-way over that spot, does that change the bulk requirements of the lot? And if it does, then we've got to communicate that to the applicant and maybe have them come back and start over. If he says, no, it doesn't, then I think we're probably fine.
Okay. If we could just raise that question to the building department, then I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a good thought.
Okay. So we have now in front of us the minutes of Tuesday, April 24, 2018.
I guess if I was absent, I can't look at it.
No, you can.
Oh, I can?
Yep. Because you still probably have different things from some of the
Right,
meetings at times.
right.
Okay, any questions? Seth, you okay?
No.
No question.
No question.
Peter?
No question.
Okay. Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of April 24th.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's accepted. Next, the minutes for Tuesday, May 22, 2018. So this time, Seth, you're not in?
Right.
Okay, Robert, any question?
Nope.
Okay, I think, Peter, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for May 22, 2018.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's accepted. Now we'll do the minutes for June 26, 2018. We have Michael, Peter, Joseph's not here.
Did you vote on the last one or abstain?
I wasn't here.
All right, so then you would abstain, okay.
Any questions?
I don't have any questions specifically on, I think the minutes are okay, but I have a question in general for, similar to what Dave just went over with that, the deed process there. So for the 55 Seven Springs, we came up with 3 or 4 different conditions. what's the responsibility to make sure that those things are followed up on, and that we've,
That belongs to the building inspector
right,
before he gives a CO.
okay,
He has
so,
to make sure that all of those conditions are complied,
right,
and the applicant doesn't get his CO until
Okay.
he doesn't.
so that responsibility is with the building inspector to
Yes.
I guess.
That's right.
And I guess we have, in the resolution, it has more descriptive language than just the 3 bullet points that are listed here?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I have no questions.
On that matter of the building department approving the conditions that were set, do we ever get notification that those conditions have been met or have not been met? Is there closure for us on this?
Typically speaking, the building inspector will just make the determination has it been met or not met. Typically, it never gets to the level of feedback back to the board unless the building inspector determines that it has not been met, and then he'll send the applicant back here.
Right, yeah, that was more my question.
Oh, okay, so if it has not been met, he will send the applicant back here. if-
Actually, let me correct that. He may send the applicant back here if further relief is required or the applicant can't meet the condition. If the applicant is not meeting the condition, the building inspector will refuse to issue either the permit or the CO.
Okay.
So the variance in effect becomes the new zoning code that's applicable to that property. So the building inspector becomes the enforcement mechanism for that law that now applies to that property,
Good,
including the
thank you.
conditions.
Any question to the minutes?
No.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for June 26, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bob,
Okay,
are you abstaining?
Yeah,
I
I
need to
guess
know what your decision.
I wasn't there, so, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. And Seth? Okay.
now
thank
we
you.
have Seth, Michael, and Peter. From July 24, the minutes for July 20, 2018. Okay, any questions?
No questions.
No questions.
Any questions, Seth?
Nope.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for Tuesday, July 24.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bob,
Abstain.
thank you. That is the last one for this evening. I didn't get any more.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second.
All in
My
favor?
God.
Aye.
Okay, now 1 minute, please, before we leave. Next month, there's no meeting. In January 1st, the town, I won't be living anymore in the town of Monroe. The town of Palm Creek kicks in. So I won't be able to serve the public anymore of the of town of Monroe. I wish I would be able to stay here, but that's what happened, and that's going to be the fact. I'm not resigning, but due to the fact, I'm here on this board since year 2000. That's now going to be 19 years.
Wow.
And
Thank you for your service.
We'll miss you.
it was a pleasure to serve the town, a pleasure to serve the public, and I would stay here longer, but that's what happened, that the town has changed, so I won't be able to sit here as a board member anymore.
Maybe we can do a variance.
Okay, I'll accept it. I'll make the motion.
Well, thank you for your time.
An annexation of your property.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Jonas. That's a lot
Yeah,
of,
thank you for your service.
community service.
There'll be a new chair next year.